450 grams of weight of water, a bit of salt, 100 grams roughly of sourdough starter from there. I'll now add the flour. You can add whatever flour you like. I mean, I like making a mixture of strong white flour and one called Wessex Cobbler. They're both from the Wessex flour mill. Nice flours. Cobbler's good because it's full of nice little seeds and grains and all that sort of thing. Starter take about a week to make from scratch. I think people think that the yeasts in the sourdough starter come from the air, the dough.
Oh, right.
They actually come from the flour itself. Yeah, so you don't leave it open to the air. So my starter, which admittedly I got from a really good guy on YouTube called Josh Wiseman. Start off with, put 50 grams of, well, you can put any proportion you want. I mean, as long as they're in the right proportion. So I put 50 grams of rye flour. I think that's the one that has most of the yeast in, actually, the rye flour. 50 grams of strong white flour. 100 grams of water, mix it up, leave it for a day. Just leave it open in your room, you don't need to refrigerate it. Next day, pour half of it away, refill with the same quantities of water. No, it's just flour and water, that's all it is.
Gosh.
And then after about a week of feeding it, so in other words, pouring away half of the mixture each day and refilling with your 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water, eventually it'll start working, so producing CO2 and going foamy. And then you know it's ready. So that whole process probably about a week, but it's variable. It could be a little bit longer, could be a little bit less depending on the conditions. You can make your mixes as dry as you want or as wet as you want. Now, handling sourdough dough, it's a lot stickier than if you make conventional dough using conventional dried or baker's yeast. So the kneading techniques are different. Now you can do a very sort of hands-on strong kneading technique where you are kneading it like normal bread. But the very simple one for beginners, which is what I do, and I'm still doing it even though I'm probably a bit more experienced now. Well, you'll see anyway. So what I'll do is just turn my scales to get to zero them. So there's about 450 grams of water in there. Now a quite a wet mixture would be what should we say, half and half water and flour will be a very wet mixture. So the one I started doing, I'm about like 500 grams of flour, 300 grams of water. Yeah, and that was still quite a wet mixture. And you can either up or down that as you want. So I'll put 450 in, so I'll probably end up with about 800, 700, 750.
Does it end up with quite a sticky dough?
Yeah, but you can do it totally by eye and experience. So you can see in your bowl what it's like if it's really sticky and sticking all over the bowl, you know, like a complete mushy mess. Just put more flour in and get it to a sort of workable consistency. Anyway, I'll bung it in. So
we've got how much water again? Just
450 mils.
450
grams.
450 grams of water.
So let's put in. We'll go for about 750 to start with. So we'll put in 3. Do half and half. About 370 of this. The strong white flour. God, that's way over. So we doesn't matter. So that's 500 of that, and we'll probably put in 250 of the cobbler. See how we go.
Plain white, and now we're adding the rye flour. Is this?
No, so this is called Wessex Cobbler bread flour. So it's strong bread flour, but it's got a lot of grains and seeds in it. So it's a nice sort of. Let's try 7. Yeah, right. So what I'm going to do is just mix that all up now. I just use a tablespoon to mix it. easier than a wooden spoon. You don't really want to get your hands in when you're mixing it like this, because your hands will get absolutely clotted and you won't be able to get the dough off very easily. So actually this is sort of coming out to quite a nice consistency. Doesn't look too wet, doesn't look too dry. Yeah, I think that might be absolutely just about spot on. That. A little bit of a mix. Get that on. Yeah, so you can probably see from that, and if you can see with the spoon podging down into it, that it's holding together, but it's reasonably sticky. So that, what are we saying there? 750 of flour to 450 of water. Yeah, so that's going to make you a loaf. Stage. All we do now is cover that with a tea towel, leave it for about an hour, and then we go on to the next stage. So having made our dough for the loaf, we've used up 100 grams roughly of the sourdough starter.
Yeah.
You see from that jar where the starter's kept, there isn't a huge amount left. Feed that, so that will keep the starter going until we make the next loaf. So very simple, not complicated at all. Always use your weighing scales, get the quantities accurate. So we'll zero the scales. Okay. So first of all, 50 grams of rye flour. Remember, these quantities it doesn't have to be totally accurate in terms of the proportions of rye flour to the proportion of strong white flour. It's, very roughly. There's actually 46 grams of rye in there, but that'll be all right. And then just make the rest of the 100 grams of flour up with strong white flour. Grams of that, or in this case 54, to make up the 100. There we go. And then you add 100 grams of lukewarm water. By lukewarm I mean just on the tepid side, basically, hardly warm at all. 100 grams of that. That's slightly more, but that won't matter. We'll give that a mix up and then stir it in well. Don't worry about it going off or anything like that. This culture's been going for 9 months now. All I'll do is probably every month, I'll just take it out of the jar, wash the jar, put it in a bowl, put the dough the starter in a bowl, clean the jar, put it back in, just to make sure. But it'll be fine. It won't go off in the meantime, just because there's bits of dough. If you look in there, that's about the consistency that you want. Put a loose cover on because it can foam out if it starts working too much. What I do is I'll leave that starter out of the fridge for a few hours so that it gets foaming up. This should foam up right to the top of the jar, and then I'll put it in the fridge and it can stay in there till we need to use it for the next loaf. And there you go. We get a decent artisan sourdough loaf now. You're probably talking £5 there or thereabouts. I mean, one of these, I don't know, a couple of quid maybe. You'd be doing it for less than half price, certainly. So It's not too bad because, as I say, your only ingredients are your starter and your flour and a bit of salt, as well as your water. So having made the initial dough, this has been allowed to prove for about an hour. As you'll see, looks fairly similar to how it did after it was first mixed, although you can see it's probably just puffed up slightly. There are some dry bits on the top. So the first stage is just to fold it over. First stage of the kneading, fold it over 4 times from the 4 points of the compass, as it were. Do it with wet hands. It stops the dough overly sticking to your hands. So just literally 1, pull and turn, pull and turn, pull and turn, pull and turn, and that's all you do for that stage. Mixes it, so it mixes the dry bits in a bit, and you can see before I put the tea towel how that's already puffing up a little bit. So that's the initial stage, and now, give or take, it's not scientific and it doesn't really matter. Every hour to 2 hours, I will do another fold. So each time you do a fold, and each time you do a folding, the dough will become more pliable, more elastic, and you'll be able to pull the dough up out of the bowl. And it will. They always say if you can make a sheet, if you pull it up and you can make a sheet of the dough and it's not splitting, then it's getting to the stage where you could make bread out of it. The more, without overdoing it, the more times you can fold it, and the longer you can leave it to prove overall during the day, the better. You'll get a much lighter, higher rise. The more, you could make bread out of it now probably, but it would probably be quite flat. It wouldn't rise very much. So I would say do that process at least 3 to 4 times during the day. And then on the very last fold, I would tend to leave it about, certainly at least 2 hours, possibly 3, in the tin, in your bread tin to prove. Now, I think traditionally sourdough, I've seen it on other YouTube videos, how it's done in America and other, where it came from, I think originally. They use proving baskets to prove it in, to give it a nice shape. And then the dough will not be put in a tin when they bake it. It'll be formed into a round, a sort of a ball shape, and probably cooked inside a Dutch oven, within your own oven. I actually just prefer to put it in a normal bread tin and cook it as a loaf, because it's simple to me. Otherwise, you've got to do quite a bit of kneading to get the shape. And with this, you can make it doesn't matter if the dough's quite sticky. Once you put it in your bread tin, it'll just rise anyway, and you don't have to do a lot of kneading with it to get it into shape, because it doesn't matter really if it's in shape. You just form a bit of an oblong out of it and drop it into the tin. So this way of doing the sourdough, I would admit, is a fairly rustic, rough and ready way of doing it, without involving a lot of sort of involved kneading and. So we've now done 3 foldings of the dough, and as you'll see now, it's beginning to inflate quite well with the carbon dioxide being produced. We'll give it one more turning and folding, and then it will be placed in the tin for baking. The finished product. Look at that grain.
Yeah.